So hi, it's Tim Allen. We're going to kick off the City Council Finance Committee meeting relative to the Tapley Street building and the building next door, et cetera. And according to what I see, I'm just going to just go around, make sure I got everybody. We got Chris signaling. We already checked with Chris. We got Tom. Lindsay, you've joined. You're there with us?
Yes.
Okay, great. And Zeta is driving. She's a member of the Finance Committee. That's who we have, the four of us. I'm on the, I guess my name isn't up there, but I guess I'm the host. But, so we're trying this technology where we do it in person from this room and people can zoom in and all that. So the purpose of this meeting was to discuss the situation with the building next door, the lease, et cetera. Chris, I know you were on vacation when the last council meeting was held, but we put it, there was some talk about the right thing to do. We had talked to Tom, et cetera. And I know you've been working on this for a year or whatever. And there was a good amount of frustration with trying to get it resolved. So the idea at that point was to put it in committee, get it resolved by the next meeting, which is September 18th, I believe. And if not, go to plan B. And this committee meeting was set up just so we get a status report of how it's going. So
yeah, Counselor, I can just maybe give a little bit of background. You're absolutely right. That's how we got here, is to sort of try to allow the parties, this 11th hour negotiation to get a new lease agreement done. As you know, the property is absolutely critical to our DPW operations. So we're really working to try to make a new, lease work. But that being said, we're not quite there yet. So that's why we wanted to have this session for the committee to be able to just have Director Signoli available to answer questions about operational, elements of the property, and in furtherance of the idea that we may have to do an eminent domain. It's not fully clear at this moment, but certainly that's why we're here today, is to discuss anything related to that, so we can answer questions from the council.
all right, good. Chris,
Counselor, if you'd like me to give kind of a background of the whole thing, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I know. What we heard at the council meeting is that you were trying all year to get somewhere with this, and it wasn't getting to the point of where we could be assured that we would be able to use that property behind the building that you need. So that's what we got up till that meeting, and then nobody was questioning your need to use it. That's just an acknowledge that we need to get, not put ourselves at risk of not having that land available to us. So add anything to that.
Yeah, and just for everybody's purposes, because I know I've spoken to a few of the counselors about this. This is land that we are currently using. This is not land that we are new land that we are trying to take. This is land that the DPW has been using for over 25 years under a lease. Over the last couple of years, Tom Moore and myself have been the two parties who have been involved with the owners next door. And we're trying to come up with a modified lease arrangement for the land. And when we say modified lease arrangement, is the original entity that owned the property, the Gorenstein family, that site was sold approximately 2 years ago, a little bit less, but about 2 years ago. And the new company that took it over started to talk to us about their development there and asked us about need for the land, etc. And we were having, regular discussions. They wanted to modify the size of the parcel that we lease so that their new tenant could use the rear of the building. Right now, the rear of the building faces our property. There is zero access to it by them. So they were looking for a modified plan to be able to get access to the building while still giving us opportunity to use the land. On that land is our scale, number one. Number two is our calcium tank that we use for liquid calcium for the winter. our sand salt pile and our sand salt mix pile and our sand pile, as well as a number of vehicles. So when we started looking at site plans, we probably went through 5, 6, 7 iterations of layouts that got us to a point in about June of this year that a layout, which I would say I wasn't 100% happy with, but was probably about as close as we were going to be with a modified plan. We were then trying to work through lease arrangements and lease details. The city has been paying about $38,000 a year for the land. And so the lease terms that we received were we would have about half of the land that we had, yet the lease was going to double and go up at a rate of 5% a year. So at that same time, as Attorney Moore probably had mentioned in the past, we kind of went on parallel paths because I didn't want to be at the end of this lease. This lease expires the end of this month. We have been told that there would be a 30-day extension. I have not seen anything in writing, and we mentioned that to Seth yesterday. The site plan that we were close to approving, probably 2 weeks after that, we received a second plan that does not in any way, shape, or form work for the DPW. And our issues with it is being able to get vehicles to circulate and use the scale, be able to get loaded, as well as being able to use our loading dock. The plan that we have now does not meet that criteria. The reason why it was changed is because the lease space that they are trying to present to us now is what is physically being leased to the tenant. They have a tenant in there now, and they got lease terms with them showing a piece of land that they were going to be getting. So it's gotten a little complicated because the tenant is also pushing with the city because they're confused as well. So what we have done is we've gone along 2 parallel paths. Path number 1 is reviewing the site plan. And right now I have a site plan that I cannot under any circumstance live with. And number 2 was eminent domain. So my goal moving forward at this time is to go through the eminent domain process through the city council. And at the same time, as me and Tom were talking yesterday, still continue to work with the entity next door so that if we can come up with an agreement before the end of the lease date, we would then just not file for the eminent domain. The reason why I want to move forward with the eminent domain is if everything falls apart at the 11th hour and I don't have council approval, I lose the land. And which means then I don't have a winter operation. So I want to make sure, and one of the issues that we've had with the owners is we've probably gone through 4 or 5 different attorneys that we've been dealing with. And one of the attorneys a year ago sent us a letter saying that there will be no lease extension, no lease, basically a termination of lease rights to the land, which was the reason we started to move forward with the eminent domain. So my goal at this point is to, answer whatever other questions you have. But number 2, go through the eminent domain process with the council. We have, unless Lindsay's going to throw a tomato at me, we have all the funds in place for it. And then it just becomes a matter, if we can't reach an agreement with the owners, we just then file for the land through the registry of deeds. And I can turn it over to Tom to add or correct any of my bad, anything that I said that might not be 100% correct, but I think I got it all.
All right, well, before we go back to Tom, Lindsay, why don't we just hear from you on what this means to how finance would deal with this one way or the other? Obviously, if the lease gets resolved and a new lease is acceptable to Chris and Tom can do the legal work, I assume that's fine. But what if that
It looks like she dropped off, Counselor.
Yeah, I don't see her on the line any longer. She was here, but I don't see her as part of the Zoom.
You're right. It's just
my understanding, Counselor, is that the financing is in place for this. That was my understanding as of when we filed with the council the first time. So I don't think it's a question of the availability of the funding.
So
Yeah,
when
she
you
just,
say it's in
excuse
place,
me, Tim, she just dropped me a text and says she's gonna be getting right back on.
Okay,
all
good.
right. What was the concern, Tom, though, about her? When you say the finance is in place, is that for a new lease? If we get a good new lease, or is that for eminent domain?
Yeah, I think it's for both, Counselor. I know there's adequate funding if we had to do a new lease agreement, and I know
Okay.
that there's the funding for the order of appropriation for the taking. That's my understanding. I'm sure she will clarify if that status has changed.
The lease amount, Tom and Counselor, is in my budget.
Okay, good.
Yeah, right.
So
That's right.
we'll assume there's no finance problems and just ask her when she comes back.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, but I think Director Signoli said it right. You know, we've been operating on parallel paths because we were sort of forced to do that. Our preference is, of course, to just continue a lease agreement that we've had in place for a quarter century. That's really our preference, and we've been really doing our best to try to make site plan layouts work. And you know, we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can get to the point where we have one that actually does work. And if we do, then we'll move forward with that. You know, a new lease, and if not, then we really have no choice but to move forward with the taking.
So, okay, so in my dreams, we were gonna go to this meeting and Tommy, you were gonna tell us we already worked out a new lease. It's acceptable.
Well, I mean, it's possible. We've made progress, I think. They gave us a finalized version of what they said is their final plan to give us. Director Signoli was very quick in review and turning it around. He had a number of comments. There were about a dozen items that needed to be addressed in order for it to be acceptable, which again, it's not uncommon to have a number of comments to a site plan. So we've given that back to their engineering group, and they're looking over what we said. And I think the next step is going to be a meeting between Director Signoli and the engineers for the ownership directly to have them kind of go through those comments and see if there is in fact a solution here. So I think we've made progress. I'm still, you know, keeping my fingers crossed we can get to the finish line. So, you know, it's September 7th. The meeting's on the 18th of September. By the time we get to the 18th of September, we will very much know whether a site plan is feasible or not, if there is a layout that's going to work. So I think by then we will know.
Well, by then, don't we need to know, because that's a council
Yeah, I mean,
meeting?
that's the deadline when we're gonna, but I think we'll know before that date. You know, when the two engineers sit down and they go over what they need to here over the final plan, there's either going to be a solution or there isn't. And, you know, that we'll have to go in whichever direction the results tell us.
Okay, so maybe we need another meeting in a week or so before the council meeting. I would like to know what our move is when we go into the council meeting. And because after that, that's the 18th. We still have 12 days of September left at that point. But September 30th is probably a Saturday. Not sure, but
well, I think,
anyway.
Councilor, I think we could do we could have a subcommittee meeting right before that Monday meeting and be able to give a full briefing on where we stand with the lease, you know, before we go in front of the council.
Yeah, that's okay.
Councilor Allen?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Councilor Allen, this Councilor Govan. So I guess I just had some questions about this. Of course, this is my first time on the city council hearing about eminent domain and the possibility. When we were at the meeting the last time, I was truly hoping that we wouldn't get to the eminent domain. So of course, I'm hoping that we get to a resolution before that. So I guess my question is around the property itself and the city. So the city owns the front part of the property where Tapley Street and the DPW like headquarters are. Is that correct?
We own obviously our piece of land. The land next door to us there is a building there now, privately owned. The backside of that building adjacent to ours is what we have been leasing. It's about 0.8 of an acre or so. We've been leasing it for 25 years, and that's the piece of land that's immediately adjacent to our loading dock, to our salt pile.
Mm-hmm.
I have a map that I could bring up, Counselor, but I know you're in the car, so
yeah, no, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
So I guess because of course, you know, the whoever sold, when they sold the property to this new owner, I don't know, were they clear that the city was using that part of it, or was there an agreement that, you know, the city would continue, or was there no discussion about that? I don't know if you know the answers to any of those questions.
As part of the sale, I do not know. I do know from a couple entities that went and looked at the parcel who were separate from these, that the real estate agent at that time did not disclose to them about the leasing in the back. This entity, when they did buy the property, probably contacted us, I'm going to say within a month of purchase, and came to us and started asking us about, their initial thing was told us day one, get all of our stuff off. We said we had a lease through, and we actually ended up having to provide them the lease. They didn't have, they weren't given copies of it. So I know it might have been you, Tom, or it might even have been Kathy Breck at the time, provided them the lease at that point, and we've been negotiating with them ever since. And like I said, we've probably layouts that we've looked at over the past year and a half.
Okay. So I guess my thought process was possibly, okay, since we don't own that land, is there another place for us to have what we currently have there? But it doesn't sound like the city's even thinking about that.
No, because it's basically on the sides of us. We're landlocked on that.
Right. Okay. So if, let's say, God forbid, we go to the eminent domain route, what does that exactly mean? And what would it entail?
That means it's very, very similar, Counselor, to what we've done on our roadway projects over the years, where we do our easements and land takings. We've already done appraisals on the property. We've done a review appraisals on the property. And we have the price for the land taking itself. Because what our goal is, if we can just come to a lease and keep going forever, that would be the way that I would want. If we come up with a lease that gives me what I can do for an operational standpoint, I'm happy with that. If that's not the case, then the city will physically take the land and join it with the land that we have. We are not looking to take any additional land other than what we are using right now.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I dropped off for a minute when I was pulling into my driveway.
Chris, when you say, pardon me, Counselor, Chris,
Please.
when you say physically take the land, what does that mean? Like, what would happen?
We will take it and we will become the owners.
Become the owners, but
We'll become the owners, yes.
but if there's people in there utilizing the building, which then would become our building.
What we're not taking the building, all we're taking is the space that we're currently leasing, which is the space behind the building.
Oh, we would just take that space.
We're not intending to take the building at all.
Thank you.
Because there's a tenant in there now. The tenant can continue to operate. There was people in there before who were operating in the building. So really what we would be doing is just physically taking into ownership what we have. And I believe that the cost is about $500,000 on that. And we would be, if we had a lease arrangement, we would be paying, I think it's $60-something thousand a year. So from a rate of return, we're, less than 10 years, that's for sure. But it is land that we desperately need for operations. It's where our sand, salt, scale operations, especially winter operations, and we use it on a daily operations as well. So extremely critical. The other thing that we've been negotiating with them is all of these things need to be moved. And we've been asking for them for certification that they would pay for it. They've told us they would pay for it. We kind of sort of have a letter, not directed to the city, that said they would pay for it. And the lease terms were given to us, what, Tom, probably a month ago?
Yeah, it was fairly recently. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fairly recent. So, you know, we had a very simple agreement before, and this one's a new one. So our goal is, you know, worst case is that we're going to be taking the land we're using now. The building can still operate the way that it's been operating and the way that it is operating now with the tenant in it.
Now, I'm sorry, thank you, Chris, for that. Counselor, Allen, if I may,
Yeah.
so let's say eminent domain happens, are they gonna be able to sue the city for, you know, the property or anything like that?
From my perspective, and we've been through this, I've been through it probably 4 or 5 times in my career here at the city. Us taking the land cannot be stopped because we are taking it for a public use. And, you know, I mean, we go through it on roadways. They can sue us for monetary damages. And then they have to show that the appraisal process that we use would be flawed. And they would have to show it. When we've done roadway projects over the year, I'm going to say I'm probably every 3 or 4 of them, somebody comes back through a legal process and says, hey, I don't think I got enough money. And they go through a legal process. From an eminent domain standpoint, the first item that we have to prove is that it is for and will always be used for a public use. That's easy. We've been using it for it. We're not changing it. It's our operation. Then the item becomes, well, did we properly compensate them for the damage of the parcel? We've done actually 2 appraisals. We did an appraisal on the entire parcel if we were so desired. And then we did an appraisal on the piece, and we're moving forward with the appraisal on the back piece for what our intent is to be able to keep our operation the way that it is.
Okay, great.
And Counselor,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, they would have 3 years from the date of the taking to file any kind of suit challenging the damage amount that we gave them or the just compensation that we paid. You know, it's, as Director Signoli said, it's unlikely they would be successful if they challenged the grounds for the takings. In this case, we very much meet the criteria, I think. They, I'm sure, believe that the value of the property is different than the value we have for it. Again, we're only taking a portion of the property. We're not taking the whole property. So that's kind of important as well. And yeah, I think often it comes down to which expert is better believed. You know, is our appraiser better believed than theirs? And you know, we'll, you know, have to cross those bridges, you know, if we go down that road. I think we're all sort of, you know, we're pulling to try to get the lease done. But again, as the director said, if it can't be done, then we really want to move forward to make sure the property is totally secured and we don't disturb any essential operations.
Right. Yeah. So, and from what I've heard then, Councilor Allen, I think that what we should do is probably schedule a meeting in another week or so that we can come back and hear another report before we go to City Council with this. What do you think?
Well, that's what I had just suggested to, maybe you stepped off or when you got home or whatever, but, and Attorney Moore said, he suggested, why don't we just meet, you know, on the Monday before the council meeting? But I'm not sure. I mean, it seems.
I mean, Council, I'd be happy to come back in a week. I have no problem coming back to give an update. I'm fine doing that. You know, I think from a standpoint of, are we doing allowing every little day to matter? I think it's better to do something next Thursday or Friday, so we don't just find something out right before the council meeting. I'm fine coming back to give a report, and I hope by then we'll have an update on the engineers meeting, because that would be, I think, the next most important step here.
Right.
Yeah. So Councilor Govan, yeah, I agree with you on that, and we'll operate on that basis. And
I just think. Yeah. So just so that, because I know a lot of times what happens is the day of the meeting, councilors really don't like finding out, oh, an hour ago, this is what you found out, and now we have to decide on it. It's harder. It's not a good feeling, I guess, to, you know, find out like right before, and then we have to decide something. I think if we know something next week, if we know next week that we have to do the eminent domain, then we can have a meeting with the, you know, the rest of the councils to let them know, and then we can, you know, figure out what we're going to do at the council meeting. Or at least get as much information as we can before we take a vote on it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. So we'll, unless
Okay,
some
that's
changes
good.
in the rest of this meeting, I'm at the council office, so I'll just step out at the end and have them set something up for next Thursday.
Yeah, that's
All
fine
right,
with
that
me.
sounds good.
That's fine with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sounds good, councilors.
But Tom, a different question. So right now, is there a proposal of something to the, to the other party that owns the building? Is there something in front of them that it meets Chris's specifications for what he needs, and we just need them to respond to that?
No, it's sort of the other way around. I think what we're trying to do now is this last real attempt to have the engineers really sit down with, they've given us, as I think Director Signoli correctly pointed out, they've given us their, I guess, their maximum allowable space they can provide us while still what I understand to be remaining in compliance with the lease that they have with the new tenant. So there's only so much of the piece of the property we currently occupy that they're going to they'd be able to lease us. So within that smaller area, relatively significantly smaller area, can we make our operations work? And they've provided us with plans that had the boundaries changing quite a bit. They've had, we had plans where the layout was different within each different boundary configuration. So now that we know the exact parameters of the area they're even going to be able to give us, we are going to have the two engineers sit down and say, is there even a possible layout that works? Is there a layout that can work? And if there isn't, and there may well be one that does work, but if they go through the math and they go through all the, the site plan kind of, scenarios to see what works and what doesn't, if they can't find one that works between the two engineers, then that means there isn't one that works. And then that means, well, we can't accept the size of the piece they're giving us because it won't work for operations. And then therefore, we're going to have to move forward with the taking. So that right now we're at the kind of last step that there would ever be to get a deal done. We've gone through the process kind of you're describing where, okay, here's what we need, here's what we can live with. And then they go, okay, let's give you a plan that gives you that. But then we get a plan that had, almost all of it, but not all of it. So we had to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And as you might expect, it takes a long time. So we've been doing this for quite a while. And at this point, at least we have what I would consider their best final offer for the space they can give us. And then that really is the key component to, do we have a site plan that works? And so they're going to, they're going to sit down, they're going to talk. That's something that should take place within the next week or so. And I don't know for sure, because I know that we're not sure of the engineer schedule on the other side. So it's really us waiting to hear from them.
So when you say the two engineers, you mean what I expect you would mean is one from their side and one from our side.
Well, the one from our side is right in front of us, but yeah, the one from their side is somebody who's been hired
Such
by
that he is, yeah,
owners,
such
right?
that I am, yes.
So yeah, no, we're gonna have the director himself, the top person with the authority to say yes or no, be the one who's in the meeting, going over the plan himself to say, does this work for what I know best, my own operations? And if he's saying yes, then we got a deal, because the rest of it's really there and all done. As much as I agree with Chris 100% in saying it's not, the best deal I would like, but it is a decent deal and it is property we desperately need. So, if we do get the layout that works, then we'll go in that direction. But it's not to say we haven't looked at a number of these things. And when I say a number, it's probably, close to double digits of actual plans we viewed. And I don't know the exact number, but it's quite a few of them back and forth that we've gone through over the months.
So just out of curiosity, what do they lose if we find a plan that's acceptable to Chris Signoli?
Yeah.
What do they lose?
Well, they wouldn't lose anything. In fact, I think they'd probably get what they would most like, which is they would be able to hopefully keep the tenant that they signed up, the new tenant, and they would be able to keep the city as a tenant paying them. So, think about it. They'd be renting a property for two different streams of income. It's probably a pretty good metric to do. That would be something they would gain. I'm not sure they would lose anything. I mean, signing the city up doesn't, I think, impact them detrimentally. I think they want us to be there in a lease. I don't think they want us to take the property. I think they want to be there in a lease with us. I just think that they only have so much space to give us, and it either works for us or it doesn't. And we're used to having the space that we have currently, which is a good deal more than they're offering. So it is, you know, it's harder for us to narrow the scope of our vehicles turning radiuses when we have a certain size, like a certain dimensions work and certain dimensions don't. And it really just comes down to that. So.
Okay. All right. So do you guys have, either of you have a next conversation with their engineer that?
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with their attorney tomorrow. We had all talked yesterday. We were at the same function by happy coincidence. And the three of us kind of said, you know, let's try to get this meeting as soon as possible done. I'll follow up tomorrow with counsel to give them another day to try to get back to us on some scheduling dates. And I'll keep being a squeaky wheel. There's only so much I can do to get responses, but the local council has been very responsive thus far. So, and that is greatly appreciated because their directors are always right. We've had a number of attorneys that we've been dealing with, and it's nice to have a quick response to get, you know, some progress made. So hopefully we can do that.
Lindsay, are you on?
No, she's not on anymore.
Okay. So, Councilor Govan, did you have any other questions for this meeting?
I just a thought came to mind. In your opinion, Councilor Moore or Chris, are they being reasonable in their request, would you say?
I think that from
I'll let Tom
business,
answer first.
yeah, sure. I think from a business perspective, they're doing what is reasonable. I think they're trying to fit two tenants onto one site and kind of maximize revenue. That makes a lot of sense. They put some money into the building, I think, to fix it up so that a tenant could go in. You know, as far as like the space they're giving us, is that reasonable? It's really tight. If we had more space, a site plan layout would be a little bit easier. It's just common sense. So I don't know. I think in a lot of ways we've been very reasonable in trying to put a square peg in a round hole here. And you know, I'll leave it at that because I don't want to try to I don't want to damage the process before we're finished with it. And if we have a chance to make a deal, it's probably best to leave it there.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Okay, that's good. So on the path of trying to make it work, you guys seem like you're on top of that. So let's just hope for the best. And on the path of it's not going to work, we're going to have to go with eminent domain. Is there anything we need to talk about in this meeting about that? I know it's stuff you do in your land takings and stuff, Chris.
No, I think, Council, I think Chris said it right again. We have our ducks in a row. There's a process that's by the statute that we do for all eminent domain. You know, I do a fair amount with the SRA for urban renewal stuff. We do a lot for road takings or improvements. We did a recent process for the Sumner Avenue Friendlies building, if you recall. And that was a more friendly process because the valuations were right where everybody thought it was okay. So we had a deal we could actually do. So technically it was a taking, but it was what you would call a friendly taking, where everybody was on the other side was okay with the numbers. You know, all of our ducks in a row if we need to pull the trigger on a taking, and that's really because of how essential the property is. And you know, we've kind of had that, again, that dual track mentality, that worst case scenario, we'd have to be doing it in eminent domain, but all else being equal, we'll try to get a deal done.
Okay. Is there any timing considerations? Like forms need to be filed by a certain date?
Yeah, I mean, process-wise, so there's a certain amount of time after the council approves the order and it gets signed that there is to record it. There's 30 days from the date that it gets approved that you have to record the order. If you don't record it within 30 days, the order is not valid and you'd have to go back and redo the council process. After that, there's a period of time, I believe it's 60 days for the city to make payment and, you know, pay the just compensation amount to the owners. And after that, there's a 3-year period for a suit to be filed challenging the taking and or the just compensation value that was paid. And that's the timeline. But the direction always right when he said the day we record the order at the registry, we are the owners, as in fee simple, the only owners in full control of the property.
And if we're meeting on September 18th, just a week from next Monday, and we decide that night to take it by eminent domain, the next, when would you be, filing that deed?
Well, I think there's a number of scenarios that go into that, Counselor. If we knew going into that meeting that every site plan we could think of and every, you know, iteration of trying to make it work doesn't work, then I think the negotiations and the lease would sort of be done. Like, I don't know that there would be a possibility for us to accept it because we just wouldn't have enough space to do operations under that scenario. At that point, we would go to record the order as soon as possible. And we would record the order, you know, probably either the day the lease expired or just before that happened. And if we were still in the process of getting negotiations done, as Director Signoli said, we would continue to do that for the 30 days or 29 days we had after the council meeting. So we would go look to record the order around the 17th of October, you know, to give us the most time to try to negotiate. Again, we've been given this 30-day extension that's, you know, hasn't been formalized by signatures yet. So we'll see if we get those documents back, hopefully soon, that says we do indeed have until October 30th. If that were the case, we could play out that scenario just like we're discussing. The real issue is that if we don't have that formally in place, the lease technically ends on the 30th of September, and we would be recording our order before that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, you understand what you just said better than I do, but basically there can't be any risk that we don't execute that thing in time so Chris can continue to use that.
Yeah, and that's why, Counselor, that's very much why we are before the council, or we came in August before the council, because we knew we couldn't wait until the September meeting to have this discussion. You know, we really wanted to have everybody understand that this was something of a last resort for us. And, you know, really, in a way, it's resurrected negotiations that have just been sort of difficult to get to the finish line, because I think the ownership wants to avoid a taking like most owners would. So, you know, I think they're doing everything they can to get to a design that works, and we are too. So hopefully that means we get there.
So then I'd make one request for our meeting, which presumably will be next Thursday. Could you bring a timeline, or could email us a timeline? You know, if it works out, here's the timeline. If it doesn't work out, here's the timeline.
Yeah, I can take care of that, Counselor. I'll put together the two scenarios where if we have a negotiation completed by the 18th, this is what it means, and if we don't, this is what it means. I can lay that out very clearly for you, just like I said, and I'll send that to the subcommittee members here so that you guys will have it before Thursday.
That'd be great.
The only other thing that I wanted to add, Counselors, and to Tom, the current lease that we have is a physical contract. It's a physical city contract that we have with them. So if we extend the agreement, it's not just, you know, hey, Tom or me is signing something and we're good. We actually have to jump through, you know, city procurement hoops.
Yeah, there'll be there'll be a period we have to publish in the register, and then the council itself will have to vote and approve the item. Yeah, that's very true. It's a good procedural point. You know what? I'll put that whole piece into it too, just to make sure, like, if we end up with a deal, Chris is right. It's not just we're inking it that day. It'll be a series of things that happen. So it's probably more like a month away from the moment we agree on it before it actually gets signed.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Maybe even slightly longer than that, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you can have those timelines to us by the time we meet next week, I'll have the council office get a meeting on the books, and
yeah, well, I mean, you may as well put the meeting on the books now, and then I'll prep my stuff and I'll have it to you guys before we sit down.
Yeah, I'm gonna have them set it up.
Just one more, if I may, Mr. Chair, who are the owners?
The owners,
new owners.
It's an LLC development entity out of New York originally, and I think they have a couple LLCs that have had ownership of the property over the last year or so, one or two of them, but it's the same principled control owners, and those are the people we've been dealing directly with. So yeah, no, it's I'm not familiar with the group, but yeah, it's a group out of New York.
The group, the original group's name was Top Rock Holdings.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know who it is now because they've created a bunch of little different LLCs, as people usually do when they buy buildings on that. And I think the latest one, Tom, was what, less than a month ago? It
was this year. I know. I think it might have been in late March or in March at some point. Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's one LLC to another, but it's the same. If you look them up, it's the same people, the same principles.
Okay.
All right, my questions are answered for now. We got a game plan. Any last question, Counselor Govan?
No, thank you very much. Thank you for the clear information.
Yeah,
Even with
happy to report.
Attorney Moore's legalese.
Happy to report, and well, I'll come back next week. We'll have an update, and hopefully it'll be a positive one.
Excellent. All
So
right.
I'll see you guys in a week.
All right,
Yeah,
sounds
thank
good.
you.
Beautiful.
you,
Thank
guys.
you all.
Director Signoli, as always.
And you
Thank
guys have any questions in the meantime, feel free to give me a yell.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you,
yes.
Director.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.